war with over 1,900 soldiers assigned. To put your tour into better context, I will briefly review the political history of the Korean Peninsula. Prior to World War II, the Japanese had colonized the Korean Peninsula. In the final days of World War II, the Soviet Union accepted the surrender of the Japanese north of the 38th parallel, while the United States accepted the surrender of the Japanese in the south. The 38th parallel was never meant to be a political boundary nor division of country. It was merely established to designate areas of responsibility. So in the spring of 1948, elections were held in the South, and this man, Dr. Soo Ri, was elected the first president of the Republic of Korea. In September of that same year, the Soviet Union appointed Kim Il-sung to be the first premier of communist North Korea. He reigned for approximately 46 years until his death in July of 1994. His eldest son, Kim Jong-il, succeeded him in power. This was the first father-to-son succession of power ever take place in a communist country. He reigned for approximately 17 years until his death in December of 2011. Kim Jong-il's youngest son, Kim Jong-un, succeeded him in power. This was the first father-to-son succession of power ever to take place in a communist country. Despite negotiations and attempts to reunify the Korean Peninsula on June 25, 1950, North Korea launched a massive surprise attack. This ensuing war lasted for over 3 years and cost over 2 million people their lives. Within the first month of the attack, the North Korean army had captured most of the Korean Peninsula. Coalition forces finally stopped the North Korean army's advance into the city of Pusan. Over the next 4 months, they performed the Incheon landing, pushing North Korea back to the Yalu River, the border between North Korea and China, at which point the Chinese army entered the war, aiding North Korea in their war efforts. The war began to stabilize around the 30th parallel. Though a permanent settlement had not yet been reached, on July 27, 1953, military commanders of the United Nations Command, the Korean People's Army, and the Chinese People's Volunteers signed an armistice or ceasefire agreement to end the fighting. This agreement is still in effect today. The MDL between the North and South has remained relatively the same ever since. This white dotted line represents the Military Demarcation Line, or MDL. Under provisions of the armistice, all military commanders were ordered to push back their troops 2,000 meters from their last point of hostile contact, thus creating a 4 kilometer wide, 241 kilometer long demilitarized zone, or DMZ. Note the location of Seoul and its relationship to the MDL. Here at the JSA, we are just 400 meters from the southern boundary of the DMZ and 2.4 kilometers from the MDL itself. This is the city of Kaesong, the original meeting place prior to being moved to the Panmunjom. Though the militarized zone is one of the most militarized places in the world, the MDL itself consists of no fortifications. It is simply a series of 1,292 yellow and black panel markers that run from coast to coast spaced at 100 and 200 meter intervals. On the southern side, these signs read Korean at the top and English at the bottom, and on the northern side, they read Korean at the top and Chinese at the bottom. Within the JSA itself, the MDL is more clearly defined by a series of white stakes that stand approximately 1 meter in height and spaced at 10 meter intervals. This further extends on a conference road with a 17 by 5 inch concrete slab in between each building. As we travel north today, this is the area we will be visiting. Notice how the MDL winds its way through the middle of the DMZ and forms a finger inside the joint security area. Upon arrival here, you will be surrounded on 3 sides by communist North Korea. We begin our trip here at Camp Bonifas and exit on the MSR, or main supply route. This is also known as Old Highway 1. For over 50 years, this is the only stretch of highway that connected North and South Korea until the agreement was made to open the East and West transportation corridors. This is still the only route that leads to the joint security area for all armistice-related events. As we travel north, I will point out Guard Post 240, Observation Post Olet, Kaesong-nan, or Freedom Village, Gijeon-nan, or Propaganda Village, the Swiss and Swedish Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission Camp, or NNSC Camp, and the former Czech and Polish NNSC Camp. I'll now highlight in better detail a few of the areas you will see today. First is the village of Kaesong-nan, or Freedom Village. The United Nations Command is responsible for implementing civil affairs and security within this unique village. We carry out our responsibilities through a security company that guards the village 24 hours a day. During the day, they guard the farmers while they work their fields, and at night they guard the village itself while the residents sleep. The villagers all own modern homes and rather large allocations of farmland. However, they do live under some very severe restrictions. They must be in the village by nightfall and inside their homes with the doors and windows secured by midnight. 1,800 meters from Kaesong-nan across the MDL is the village of Gijeon-nan, or Propaganda Village. It obtained its name due to an extremely large speaker system located throughout the area that until June of 2004 would broadcast propaganda 6 to 12 hours a day. It could be heard all the way here at Camp Bonifas, but mostly at night. This propaganda idolized Kim Jong-il to be a great leader and encouraged the citizens of Tae-San-dan as well as the rest of the republic to defect to this so-called village of paradise. However, if one were to do so, he'd find himself rather lonely because the village is mostly uninhabited. You do see people from time to time who work at the Tae-Shan industrial complex, maintain upkeep on this flagpole, and raise and lower this extremely large North Korean flag. This is one of the largest flags in the world and has an approximate length of 31 meters. This is the second of 2 flagpoles to ever have stood in the village. In 1981, the Republic of Korea donated a flagpole to the village of Tae-San-dan. Just so happened that this flagpole stood taller than the flagpole in Gyeonggi. So North Korea quickly responded by building a taller flag. The flagpole in Tae-San-dan stands at 100 meters in height, while the flagpole in Gyeonggi stands at over 860 meters in height. Once reached the JSA, I'll point out the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission camp. Delegates from Switzerland, Sweden, Czechoslovakia, and Poland originally formed the NNSC. The commission was charged with the investigation of all armistice violations occurring outside the DMZ. Currently, they work with 3 delegates. The Swiss and Swedish delegates who stay year-round, and the Polish delegates who come for biannual meetings. Once we reach checkpoint 3, I'll point out the former Czech and Polish NNSC camp as seen here on the right. Here on the left is the North Korean People's Peace Museum. This museum was constructed in less than 48 hours for the sole purpose of signing the armistice agreement. Also visible from checkpoint 3 is the Bridge of No Return. The Bridge of No Return obtained its name near the end of the Korean War when Operation Big Switch and Operation Little Switch were conducted. The United Nations Command returned approximately 82,000 prisoners of war, while the North Korean and Chinese returned approximately 13,000 prisoners of war. These prisoners were lined up on either side of the bridge and given the opportunity to cross into the country of their choice. However, once they did, they could never return, hence the name. The Bridge of No Return lies on the southern boundary edge of the Joint Security Area. All the blue buildings you see belong to United Nations Command or UNC, and all the red buildings belong to North Korea or the KPA. Prior to 1976, the JSA was considered a neutral location, and both guard forces could cross the MDL freely. North Korea took full advantage of this by building 4 communist guard posts on the southern boundary road, while the UNC built none in the north. Note the location of checkpoint 4 and how it is surrounded on 3 sides by communist guard posts. Soldiers at checkpoint 3 had limited visibility of checkpoint 4 due to an extremely large yellow poplar tree that grew in the area. So on the 18th of August 1976, the UNC dispatched a 5-man civilian work detail accompanied by a 12-man security crew to conduct routine tree trimming to improve visibility between the 2 checkpoints. Upon their arrival, they were met by 28 North Korean guards. Work began as scheduled, however, after 15 minutes, the North Korean guards attacked. This ensuing fight lasted for only 4 minutes, but in that time, the JSA company commander, Captain Arthur Bonifas, and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett were brutally axed to death. To give you a better idea of how outnumbered they were that day, I will show you 3 JSA soldiers visible in this photograph. First is rather hard to make out, but he can be seen here fighting off 7 North Korean guards. Here's the helmet of Captain Bonifas, who was killed in front of his own vehicle. And here you can clearly see a North Korean guard wielding an axe at a JSA soldier. Due to this unprovoked act of violence, a special series of meetings was held, and it was decided that the actual MDL should separate the 2 guard forces. Under these new provisions, there were no more acts of violence until November 23, 1984, when a Soviet citizen on a North Korean-sponsored tour dashed across the MDL in an attempt to defect to the free world. North Korean guards, armed with pistols and rifles, followed him in an attempt to kill or capture him. There were approximately 30 North Korean guards in the northern portion of the second garden that day. The JSA Quick Reaction Force was immediately alerted and able to halt and outflank the North Korean main body. This ensuing firefight lasted for 20 minutes, and in that time the KPA had 3 men killed and 5 men wounded, and the JSA had 1 man killed, Corporal Jane, and 1 man wounded. The Soviet citizen was protected throughout the firefight and evacuated back to Camp Bonifas. On our trip north today, you will see North Korean guards. These red armbands state that they are military police. Under provisions of the armistice, all armed personnel inside the DMZ must wear these armbands. However, North Korea no longer does so. They may come down to see our tour today, and we ask that you do not communicate with them anyway, verbally or non-verbally. We provide security and assistance for humanitarian operations, such as the repatriation of remains from the Korean War and the delivery of humanitarian aid to the north. We also provide security and assistance for visiting dignitaries and heads of state, such as former President of the United States, George W. Bush, President of the Republic of Korea, England Pak, Prime Minister of New Zealand John Key, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates were all seen on tour here at the Panmunjom. Like these dignitaries, you will be guarded by a soldier of this battalion. Soldier on the right is a U.S. Army infantry soldier. We served 12 months here. Soldier on the left is a Republic of Korea or ROK soldier. They served 24 months here. Both soldiers must meet an above average aptitude standard of regular soldiers as well as have a clean civilian and military record. It is due to all this the fact that we are the most forwardly deployed unit on the entire Korean Peninsula and stand face to face with our enemies on a daily basis. The United Nations Command, the United States Army, and the Republic of Korea have given us our motto, which we so proudly state. Ladies and gentlemen, we truly are in front of them all. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, this will be your last opportunity to use the restroom before we come back.